Hello everyone, and welcome to Vale of Hearts, a place where love finds its way through the quietest corners of the soul. They say love shows up when you least expect it. For Ava Sinclair, it showed up bleeding all over her brand new white scrubs at 2:47 in the morning. The emergency room smelled like coffee, bleach, and bad decisions when a man stumbled through the doors. Tall, dark, and annoyingly handsome in a I'm too mysterious for this world kind of way. He wasn't just any patient. He was the kind who said no cops, no paperwork, just you. Which, by the way, was not something they covered in nursing school. Ava liked to think she was a rational woman, steady job, loyal to her caffeine, allergic to drama. But the moment his gray eyes locked on hers, rationality packed up and took the night off. Because under those fluorescent hospital lights, between the chaos and the quiet, something impossible started. A secret, a spark, maybe even a story worth regretting later. And if you ask her now, she'll swear she didn't fall for him that night. She just tripped, very dramatically, right into whatever this was. Welcome to Vale of Hearts, where love isn't gentle, secrets aren't small, and even fate has a sense of humor. The storm had been growling over Manhattan since midnight, heavy, relentless, soaking the city in sheets of rain that blurred the skyline into watercolor shadows. Inside St. Luke's Memorial Hospital, fluorescent lights hummed like tired bees, flickering in protest against the hour. It was 2:43 a.m. when Nora Bennett decided that caffeine had officially failed her. Her scrubs were creased, her ponytail was halfway to rebellion, and the ER smelled like a mix of bleach, burnt coffee, and despair. Another Thursday night in New York City. Except for the thunder that kept making the windows tremble like they were alive. She was halfway, through updating a patient's chart when the automatic doors slid open with a hiss, letting in a gust of cold wind, rain, and chaos. A man staggered in, tall, in a black suit soaked through, one hand pressed against his side. Blood, a lot of it. The crimson had already spread across his shirt, blending with the storm water, trailing down to the floor in slick streaks. "Help," he said, voice low, foreign, rough around the edges. "No police. No paperwork. Just you." Nora froze for a heartbeat. Every protocol she knew screamed no. A gunshot wound meant a police report. A man with that much composure while bleeding meant trouble. "Sir," she started, forcing her voice steady. "I can't treat you without—" His other hand shot out, gripping the counter, the motion sharp, deliberate. Please, the word wasn't desperate. It was commanding, and the way his gray eyes locked on hers, clear even through the exhaustion, made her pulse trip over itself. "I don't want trouble," she said quietly. "Then help me before it finds us both." Something about that sentence, the U.S. both, stuck in her mind like a hook. Against better judgment, against the rules she'd memorized, Nora found herself stepping out from behind the desk. "Follow me," she whispered. She led him through the dim back corridor, away from the main ER. Rain pounded harder outside, echoing through the thin glass like impatient knuckles. The man's footsteps were uneven but determined, his breath shallow. She guided him into an unused, sterile room, one of those spaces the hospital kept ready but rarely used. The lights buzzed above, casting long shadows across his face as he sat on the metal table. "Take off the jacket," she said. He obeyed without argument, peeling off the soaked fabric. Beneath it, the white shirt clung to him, streaked with blood and rain. He moved carefully, like someone who knew how much pain to ignore. When she cut through the shirt with scissors, 2 bullet wounds revealed themselves, one near his shoulder, the other grazing his ribs. "Clean entries, no exit wounds. You're lucky," she murmured, mostly to herself. "Neither hit anything vital." He gave a short laugh, dry and humorless. "Luck's a matter of perspective." Nora glanced up, frowning, then froze. A small pendant hung from a chain around his neck, slipping free from under the bloodied shirt. The symbol etched into the metal, a crescent crossed with a broken arrow, struck her like a jolt. She knew that mark. It was the same symbol the police had photographed on her younger sister's body 3 years ago. The only clue they'd ever found before the case went cold. Her throat tightened. Where did you get that necklace? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he fixed her with those unreadable eyes, calm even as blood seeped between her gloved fingers. You don't want to know? Not yet. She swallowed hard, anger flaring through confusion. Try me. His lips curved, not in amusement but in resignation. If I tell you now, you'll stop helping me. She stared at him. Then against all logic, she kept working. Because whatever answers he had, she wasn't ready to lose them. Not tonight. Anesthetic? She asked, reaching for a syringe. No, Nora blinked. Excuse me? I need to stay alert. Suit yourself, she muttered, more sharply than she meant to. But if you pass out, I'm not catching you. He smirked faintly. Fair. As she cleaned the wound, the metallic scent of blood filled the air, sharp, electric. He didn't flinch. His jaw stayed tight, muscles rigid, breath measured. She couldn't help but think he'd done this before. Been patched up like this in the middle of the night by someone equally unwilling to ask questions. What's your name? She asked. Adrian, he said after a pause. Adrian Moretti. She tied off a suture, glanced at him. You from around here, Adrian? Not anymore. Should I ask where you're from? You can, he said, voice low, but I won't answer. Nora huffed out a breath. You're a delight. The faintest ghost of a smile crossed his lips. So are you. That threw her more than it should have. She looked away quickly, focusing on the bullet lodged near his rib cage. This one's deeper, she said. You'll feel it. I already do. Her gloved hands trembled just once as she reached in with the forceps. The bullet came free with a sickening clink, landing in the tray like a punctuation mark. She exhaled. Done. He studied her, eyes narrowing slightly. Why are you helping me? Because you're bleeding on my table, she said flatly. And because I'm apparently terrible at following rules. His gaze softened. Just a fraction. You saved my life. Let's not get sentimental, she said, pulling off her gloves. You're not out of the woods yet. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm raged outside, thunder rolling over the city. Then he said it, quiet, almost like a confession. The man who killed your sister is the same man hunting me. The words hit like a slap. Nora froze, the room suddenly too small, the air too thin. What did you just say? He met her eyes, unflinching. I didn't kill her, Nora, but I tried to save her. I failed, her pulse pounded in her ears. How do you know about her? About me. I know more than you think. But if you don't want to join her, you need to listen to me now. Before she could respond, the lights flickered violently, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. A heartbeat later, the hospital's emergency alarm screamed to life. Code Black. Active threat in the building. Red lights began to flash in the hallway. Nora's breath caught. What the hell? Adrian was already moving. Despite his injury, he pushed off the table and limped toward the door, checking the small window. They're here. Who's here? She whispered. The ones who shot me. Nora felt a chill crawl up her spine. From outside came the echo of boots, multiple, heavy, deliberate. Not the chaotic rush of hospital staff, but the coordinated rhythm of trained men. He reached into his soaked jacket and pulled out a sleek black pistol. And for the first time, Nora realized just how wrong this entire night had gone. Lock the door, he ordered. She hesitated. That's not going to stop anyone with a gun. It'll slow them down, he said. And right now, seconds matter. He pressed one hand to his ribs, the other steadying the weapon as he glanced toward the only other exit, a narrow window half covered by rain. Adrian, she said, forcing herself to sound calm. I don't know who you are or what you've dragged into my hospital, but you need to... Quiet. He raised a hand, motioning for silence. Outside, the footsteps stopped. The corridor went dead still except for the rain tapping the glass. Then came a voice, muffled, authoritative, through the door. Mr. Moretti, you're surrounded. Step out with your hands where we can see them. Police. Or at least that's what it sounded like. Nora exhaled shakily. See? It's the police. You're safe. Adrian's laugh was low, bitter. Not all of them wear the right badge. Before she could process that, a gunshot shattered the window of the next room. The sound echoed like thunder inside the small space. Nora flinched. Adrian grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer, pressing her against the wall beside the door. "You stay behind me," he murmured, voice so close she could feel the heat of it against her cheek. "No matter what happens," her heart hammered. "You can't be serious?" "I'm always serious." Another gunshot. This time closer. Glass rained from the hallway window. Shouts followed, rough, foreign accented. Not NYPD. Adrian moved like a man born for chaos. Calm, efficient, deadly. He aimed toward the door as shadows passed the frosted glass. Nora clutched the counter behind her, every muscle in her body tight. She didn't know whether to scream or faint or hit him for dragging her into whatever nightmare this was. Instead, she did what she always did when panic hit. She focused on her breathing. In, out, steady. The next shot didn't come from outside. It came from Adrian's gun. The flash lit the small room like lightning. A body hit the floor beyond the door with a heavy thud. Silence. Except for the rain and the alarms. Adrian exhaled, lowering his weapon. "We need to move." "I'm not going anywhere with you," she snapped. "You don't have a choice," he said, turning toward her. His voice softened then, almost pleading. "If they find you here, they'll kill you too. You helped me. That's enough reason for them." Nora's mouth went dry. Somewhere deep inside, logic screamed for her to stay, to wait for backup, to trust the system. But the system had failed her once before. Her sister's case and forgotten, unsolved, and this man, bleeding, armed, dangerous, was the first to ever speak her name, like it meant something more than another report file. Outside, footsteps echoed again. Nora made her choice. "Fine," she said, grabbing a stack of gauze and shoving it at his chest. "But if I die tonight, I'm haunting you." His lips curved, faintly, genuinely. "I've been haunted before." He limped toward the door, unlocking the side exit that led into the maintenance corridor. The hallway beyond was dim, flickering red under the emergency lights. "Stay close," he whispered. "Not a problem," she muttered. "You're bleeding a trail anyway." That earned her another half-smile. Quick, almost human. Together they disappeared into the shadows of the hospital, leaving behind the blood, the alarms, and the ghosts waiting in the dark. Outside, the storm howled louder, swallowing Manhattan whole. And somewhere deep inside the chaos, Nora Bennett realized the storm wasn't the most dangerous thing that night. It was the man she'd just decided to save. The hospital doors sealed behind them with a metallic thud, muffling the alarms still howling through the building. Outside, the storm tore across Manhattan like it had a grudge against the city. Rain lashed the glass, and thunder rolled over the skyline. Nora's pulse hadn't slowed since the first gunshot. She didn't know where Adrian Moretti was leading her, only that every step took them deeper into danger. The corridor ahead was lit by flickering emergency lights, painting everything in pulsing red. Somewhere above them, a voice barked through a radio, distorted and harsh. "Target confirmed. Sector C. Find the asset. Eliminate witnesses." Nora froze. That word, witnesses, wasn't part of any police procedure she knew. Adrian pressed a hand to her shoulder and pushed her behind a supply cart, his movements quick despite the blood soaking his side. "They're sweeping the wing," he whispered. "We've got maybe 60 seconds. "Those men," she whispered back. "They're not police, are they?" "Some used to be." His tone was flat, edged with something colder. The sound of boots echoed closer. Nora held her breath as a beam of flashlight cut across the hall, sliding past their hiding spot. A man's silhouette appeared, black uniform, radio on his shoulder, rifle ready. Then a second voice came through the radio. "Hanlon wants confirmation. The nurse is with him. Orders remain. No witnesses." Nora's stomach dropped. Hanlon. The name buzzed in her ears, foreign yet familiar. Adrian's expression hardened. He mouthed one word. "Move." They slipped into the pharmacy room. the air inside sharp with the sterile scent of alcohol and antiseptic. Nora's shoes squeaked faintly against the tile as she pulled the door shut behind them. For a moment, silence. Then bang, a gunshot shattered the hallway outside. Nora's heart jumped. Through the frosted glass window of the pharmacy door, she saw a blur of movement. A uniformed man raising his weapon and firing again. The second bullet hit someone in a white coat, one of the security guards. He went down instantly. Nora clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Adrian crouched by the wall, picking up a stainless steel scalpel from a nearby tray. "If they find us," he said quietly, "you run. You don't look back." "You think I'm leaving you here to die?" she hissed. He gave her a small crooked smile. "That's the idea. Terrible idea," she shot back. "You're bleeding everywhere, and I don't even know why I'm still listening to you." Adrian's reply came soft, almost amused despite the chaos. "Because you're not built to walk away from someone bleeding." Before she could retort, a voice shouted from the hall. "Pharmacy clear next." "Move in!" Adrian's eyes met hers. "Time's up." The next 30 seconds blurred into motion. Adrian shoved one of the metal cabinets toward the door just as it burst open. The first man through didn't have time to react. Adrian drove the scalpel into his forearm, grabbed the rifle as it fell, and fired once. The echo was deafening in the small room. "Go," Adrian barked, pulling Nora toward the side exit, a maintenance stairwell. She stumbled after him, adrenaline drowning every rational thought. As they slammed the door behind them, she saw the word Hanlon printed on one of the radios lying near the fallen man. Her heart clenched. Hanlon, the same Hanlon who gave the order? The same Hanlon who runs the task force that's supposed to protect you, Adrian said grimly, descending the stairs. Except he's not protecting anyone. He's selling them. Selling people, Adrian cut in, voice hard. Women, children. Your sister stumbled onto one of his shipments 3 years ago. That's why... Stop. Nora's voice cracked. The walls felt too close. Not here. Not now. He nodded once, accepting it, but the look in his eyes told her everything she didn't want to believe. They reached the basement, a maze of pipes, laundry carts, and humming machinery. The floor vibrated faintly under their feet. Adrian's pace faltered. His wound had reopened, blood seeping through the bandage Nora had put on. She caught his arm just as his knees buckled. Hey, stay with me, she said, lowering him gently against a stack of boxes. You're losing too much blood. He gave a rough chuckle, trying to mask the pain. I told you. Terrible idea following me. Yeah, well, she muttered, ripping open a fresh gauze pad. I've had worse first dates. That earned a faint smirk from him, the kind of smile that came out only when he was too tired to hide it. If this is a date, I owe you dinner. And an apology. Start with staying alive, she said. We'll talk dinner later. She tightened the bandage, and he winced, gripping her wrist. His touch was firm but not rough, grounding. You're not like them, he murmured. Them? The people who see blood and run. Nora's heart gave an unsteady flutter. Yeah, well, maybe I'm just too stubborn to know when to leave. A crash echoed down the corridor. Voices again. Closer. Adrian pushed himself up, breathing through gritted teeth. They're coming through the west side. We can't stay here. Where do we go? He pointed toward a metal grate at the far end of the room, a service tunnel. That leads to the loading docks. From there, if we're lucky, the parking lot. Lucky, she repeated dryly. Right. They crawled through the narrow passage, the air thick with the smell of oil and damp concrete. Every noise, every drop of water, every clang of metal felt amplified. Behind them, boots hit the floor. Flashlights swept the tunnel walls. Faster, Adrian whispered. You think I'm not trying? She hissed. He glanced back, eyes glinting in the dim light. Remind me never to argue with a nurse. She would have laughed if she wasn't so busy trying not to die. They reached the loading bay, the storm visible through the half-open gate, rain slashing sideways across the asphalt. Adrian checked the corners, gun raised. Nora spotted a red exit sign above the far door. There, the ambulance dock. But before they could move, A familiar voice echoed through the intercom system, distorted but unmistakable. "This is Dr. Elise Porter. Security teams, the suspects are moving toward the south exit. Contain immediately." Nora froze. Elise, her supervising doctor. Her mentor, Adrian's expression darkened. "She's working with them." "That's impossible," Nora said, shaking her head. She's not like that." Adrian gave her a look that was all pity. "Everyone's like that when the money's right." The intercom clicked off. Then came the sound of engines. Multiple vehicles pulling into the loading area outside. Headlights cut through the rain, blinding. "Damn it," Adrian muttered. "They've boxed us in." Nora scanned the room, heart hammering. "Ambulance keys." There had to be keys. Her gaze landed on a hook by the wall, a single tag dangling there. Adrian. She grabbed them. "Can you still shoot?" He gave her a wry grin. "Ask me again after I bleed out." She didn't wait. Together, they sprinted for the ambulance bay. Bullets tore through the air as the garage doors began to rise. Adrian fired back twice, sending sparks off a metal railing. Nora jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door as Adrian climbed in beside her. "Buckle up," she said breathlessly. He laughed, actually laughed, as she turned the key. "You even know how to drive one of these?" "I've watched enough medical dramas to fake it." Comforting. The ambulance roared to life, tires screeching against wet concrete. Nora hit the gas just as the first of Hanlon's men appeared in the doorway. Bullets pinged off the back of the vehicle as they shot through the exit, crashing into the storm. Rain hammered the windshield. The city blurred into streaks of red and blue from distant emergency lights. Adrian slumped against the seat, pale but conscious. "You're insane," he said between shallow breaths. "You're welcome," she shot back. They tore through the empty streets, wipers struggling to keep up. Behind them, 2 black SUVs gave chase, headlights cutting through the darkness. Adrian twisted around, firing through the back window. "They're not giving up." "Neither am I," she muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. "Hang on." She swerved down a side street, narrowly missing a trash bin. The ambulance fishtailed, water spraying everywhere. Adrian looked at her, half in awe, half in disbelief. "You sure you're not ex-military?" "Just really good at surviving bad dates." A bullet cracked the side mirror. Adrian fired again, hitting the front tire of one SUV. It spun out, crashing into a streetlight. "One down," he said. "Still got one breathing down our necks." Ahead, the freeway entrance loomed. Nora floored it. The siren wailed, echoing through the storm. As they hit the ramp, a barricade came into view. Flashing lights, figures in uniform. Nora's stomach dropped. "Please tell me those are real cops." Adrian's silence was answer enough. She didn't slow down. "Hold on to something." The ambulance smashed through the flimsy barrier, splinters flying. Behind them chaos erupted, sirens shouting, engines roaring. But they were through, speeding out of Manhattan and into the dark stretch of highway leading north. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm raged, and the city lights faded behind them. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. "You just rammed a police blockade. You said they weren't real." "I said some of them weren't." Nora glanced at him, rain glinting in her eyes like shards of glass. "Well, guess we'll find out which ones in the morning." Despite the blood and exhaustion, Adrian laughed softly. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the craziest. Probably both," she said. He leaned back, closing his eyes, the faintest smile still on his lips. "Remind me never to underestimate a nurse again." "Remind me never to trust a man bleeding in a suit," she countered. Thunder cracked overhead, and for the first time that night, Nora felt something almost like relief, a fragile calm, suspended in chaos. The city disappeared in the rearview mirror, swallowed by rain and distance. She had no idea what waited ahead, only that she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. And beside her, the stranger she'd saved, the one with too many secrets and not enough blood left, smiled faintly through the haze. "Next stop," he murmured. Voice barely audible over the storm. Freedom. Or something that looks like it. Nora glanced at him, then back at the road. Let's just get out alive first. Outside? The storm howled. But inside that speeding ambulance, under the flicker of lightning, two people who should never have met found themselves bound by the same fragile thing. Survival. And maybe, just maybe, something dangerously close to trust. The city lights disappeared behind them, swallowed by the storm. For the first time in hours, the only sounds were rain hammering the windshield and Adrian's uneven breathing beside her. Nora's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She had no idea where she was going, only that turning back wasn't an option anymore. They drove north for nearly 2 hours, the ambulance roaring through empty highways until the skyline turned into pine-covered hills. The storm finally began to fade, leaving only a misty drizzle and the low hum of tires on wet asphalt. Adrian stirred, his voice a rasp. You can stop now, Nora glanced at him. He was pale, eyes half-lidded, the bandage dark with blood. You need a hospital. No hospitals, he muttered. They'll find us before sunrise. She bit her lip. Then what, Adrian? You want me to Google safe house for fugitives with gunshot wounds? He gave a weak laugh. Left turn ahead. There's an old cabin about a mile in. She frowned. And how exactly do you know that? I bought it years ago, for when things went wrong. Great, she murmured. So this is your version of a vacation home. He smiled faintly, eyes drifting shut again. Something like that. The cabin sat deep in the woods, tucked between dark pines and fog. It looked abandoned, the kind of place no one would think to search. Nora parked the ambulance behind a thicket of trees and helped Adrian out. He leaned on her shoulder, heavier than he looked, his breath shallow. Careful, she said softly. You lose any more blood and I'm putting you on an IV drip made of sarcasm. Wouldn't be the worst thing you've injected me with, he murmured. Keep talking. I'll test that theory. She kicked the door open. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and old wood. A fireplace stood cold in the corner, beside a faded couch and shelves lined with unopened whiskey bottles. She got him to the couch, then rummaged through drawers until she found a small first aid kit, outdated but usable. When she turned back, he was watching her. What? She asked. You're shaking, he said quietly. She looked down. Her hands trembled slightly, from exhaustion, adrenaline, or the realization that she had just committed several felonies. I'm fine. Liar. She rolled her eyes, but the word lingered in the air, softer than an accusation. She cleaned and rebandaged his wound in silence, trying not to notice how close he was, how his eyes followed every movement. The storm outside had calmed into a steady drizzle, rain whispering against the windows. When she finished, she sat back on the floor, resting her arms on her knees. So, she said after a moment, you going to tell me the rest of it? Adrian leaned his head back, eyes on the ceiling. Hanlon runs a trafficking network. Politicians, cops, businessmen. They smuggle people in and sell information to whoever pays most. Nora felt her stomach twist. And my sister? She found proof. She wasn't supposed to. Nora's breath caught. You said you tried to save her. I did, he said, voice low. But by the time I got there, she was already gone. Hanlon made it look like a random killing. I kept the pendant as proof. For a long time, Nora didn't speak. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fire she'd finally lit. When she did speak, her voice was steady. Too steady. So that's why you came to my hospital. You knew who I was. I knew you were the only person who wouldn't run. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Congratulations, your gamble paid off. Later, after she'd forced him to take antibiotics and sip some water, Nora stepped outside. The air was cool, heavy with pine and smoke. For the first time since the night began, the silence felt dangerous in a different way. Intimate. Almost fragile. She stared at the dark line of the trees, trying to make sense of it all. She'd broken laws, risked her job, her life, for a man she'd known for less than a night. And yet, every time she looked at him, something inside her softened. Not trust, not yet, but a strange pull she couldn't name. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. Adrian leaned against the frame, a blanket around his shoulders. "You should rest," he said quietly. "I can't," she replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear that voice again, the one on the radio." "Hanlon?" She nodded. "He said eliminate witnesses, like it was just business." Adrian's jaw tightened. "To him it is." She turned to face him. "Then why haven't you stopped him?" His gaze met hers, haunted. "Because the people protecting him wear better suits than the ones chasing us." Inside, the firelight flickered across the walls, painting their faces in warm gold and shadow. Adrian sank onto the couch again, exhaustion settling over him. Nora hesitated before sitting beside him. Not too close, not too far. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was something else, heavier, unspoken but alive. Finally, he said, "You could still walk away. I wouldn't blame you." She studied him, her voice quiet. "And let you bleed out in the middle of nowhere? Not my style." He smiled faintly. "You keep saving me, I might start to think you care." "Don't push your luck, Moretti." He chuckled softly, then winced from the pain. She reached instinctively to steady him, her hand brushing his chest. The contact lingered a moment longer than either of them meant it to. Their eyes met. The air between them shifted, not just tension now, but something more dangerous. Nora pulled back first, clearing her throat. "You need rest." Adrian leaned his head back, a small smile still ghosting his lips. "You sound like my doctor. Technically, I was your nurse. Big difference. Not to me." That night, Nora sat awake by the fire, the sound of rain tapping the window like a heartbeat. Adrian slept fitfully, murmuring in a language she didn't recognize. Every so often he'd flinch, some nightmare chasing him even here. She should have felt safe now, hidden miles from the city. But the quiet made her uneasy. The world outside felt like it was holding its breath. Then she heard it, faint at first. A low hum, headlights, her pulse spiked. She stood, crossing to the window. Down the dirt road, 2 sets of lights glowed faintly through the trees. Nora's voice trembled. "Adrian, someone's coming." He was awake instantly, eyes sharp. "How far?" "Half a mile, maybe less." He grabbed his gun, checked the chamber. "They found us faster than I thought. Who?" "Does it matter?" She swallowed hard. "What do we do?" He looked at her, steady, focused. "You take the keys to the ambulance. Drive west until the highway. Don't stop for anything. And you? I'll hold them off." "Like hell you will," she snapped. Adrian almost smiled, the faint, reckless kind that only made him look more dangerous. "You really don't take orders well." "Only from people who aren't half dead," she shot back. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the heat radiating from his skin despite the chill. "Nora," he said softly, "if I don't make it..." "Don't," she cut him off. "You don't get to give me the tragic hero speech. Not tonight." For a moment, they just looked at each other. The storm outside, the fire inside, and 1,000 unsaid words in between. Then, through the distant roar of thunder, came the crunch of tires on gravel. Adrian turned toward the door, gun raised. Nora's heart pounded as she grabbed the med bag and flashlight. "Ready?" he asked. She took a breath. "No." "Good," he said, eyes dark and calm. "That means you'll survive." Outside, the headlights broke through the trees, and the hunt began again. The headlights burned through the forest fog like ghosts searching for the living. Nora gripped the pistol Adrian had given her, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. The night smelled of pine, smoke, and fear. They'd survived too much to die here, but as the engines grew louder, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that the real storm hadn't even started yet. They waited inside the cabin, the faint glow of the dying fire flickering against the walls. Adrian crouched near the window, scanning the tree line. Then his phone buzzed. A number flashed. Unknown caller. He hesitated, then answered. "Moretti." The voice on the other end was sharp, authoritative, female. "This is Agent Collins, FBI. We've tracked Hanlon's operation. We're sending a team to extract you both. Nora's breath caught. The FBI? Adrian's jaw tightened. How do I know you're real? You called us once, remember? 3 years ago, when your cover was blown in Naples. We've been trying to locate you since. GPS shows your signal near the Catskills. Sit tight. The line went dead. Nora frowned. You trust them? He didn't answer right away. His expression gave her the truth. No. She grabbed the phone, checking the trace. Adrian, this call. It was routed through a Manhattan police server. His face went cold. Hanlon's people. Then it's a trap. Before he could reply, a knock echoed through the cabin door. 3 steady raps. Pause. 2 more. Adrian raised his gun. Get behind me. The door creaked open, and there stood Dr. Elise Porter, drenched from the rain, a flashlight in one hand, her hospital ID still clipped to her coat. Nora's mouth fell open. Elise? Thank God, Elise gasped. I've been trying to find you. The news, they said you were wanted for aiding a fugitive. Her eyes darted to Adrian, full of forced surprise. You're the one from the ER. Adrian didn't lower his weapon. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same, came a deep voice from behind her. Hanlon stepped into view, flanked by 2 men in tactical gear. His suit was soaked, but his grin was dry, smug, practiced. Good evening, Mr. Moretti, Hanlon said smoothly. And Nurse Bennett. Quite the Bonnie and Clyde act you've got going here. Nora's stomach turned. You murdered my sister. Hanlon's grin widened. I clean up messes, Miss Bennett. She was one. Nora lunged forward, but Adrian's arm shot out, stopping her. His voice was low and dangerous. Let her go, Hanlon. You want me? Oh, I do, Hanlon said, stepping inside. But I also need to thank Dr. Porter for making that possible. Elise lowered her flashlight, her expression twisting. Not guilt, not shame, but something colder. Wait, Nora said, backing up a step. What is he talking about? Elise exhaled slowly, then smiled. That same calm, clinical smile Nora had seen 1,000 times during night shifts. When I treated his wound, I inserted a microchip into the sutures. Just in case he decided to run, Nora's world tilted. You tagged him like a lab rat? Insurance, Elise said simply. Hanlon pays better than the hospital ever did. Adrian's voice dropped to a growl. You sold us out. Not us, darling, Elise said. Just you. Then all hell broke loose. The first shot shattered the lamp. The cabin plunged into strobing chaos. Gunfire, shouting, splinters of wood flying. Nora hit the floor, the noise deafening. Adrian returned fire, hitting one of Hanlon's men in the shoulder. Elise screamed, ducking behind a chair that exploded under another bullet. Hanlon's voice rang out through the smoke. Try not to ruin the merchandise, boys. Adrian rolled behind the couch, reloading. Nora, stay down! But she was already crawling toward the medical kit, her arm burning from a grazing shot. Blood soaked through her sleeve, but she barely felt it. Adrian, she shouted, tossing him a spare clip. He caught it mid-motion, fired again, and dropped another man. For a moment, the gunfire stopped. The only sound was the rain and the ragged breaths of the living. Then Elise stood, her face pale, her hands trembling but steady enough to hold a pistol. You should have stayed in the hospital, Nora, she said softly. You don't belong in this world. Nora rose slowly, blood trickling down her arm. You're right, I don't. But I'm learning fast. Elise smiled faintly. You're too soft. Maybe. Then Nora lunged, fast, desperate. Elise fired, missing by inches. Nora slammed into her, grabbing the syringe from the medical bag. It was adrenaline. Before Elise could react, Nora plunged the needle into her neck and hit the plunger. Elise gasped, her body convulsing violently as the drug flooded her system. Her gun clattered to the floor. Seconds later, she collapsed, eyes wide, unmoving. Nora stood over her, chest heaving. Guess I'm not that soft. Hanlon's remaining man fired again, shattering a window. Adrian ducked in, but not fast enough. The bullet grazed his shoulder. He fired back, emptying the clip. When the smoke cleared, only Hanlon remained, standing calmly in the doorway, unfazed. Enough games, Hanlon said. Drop it. Adrian aimed again, but Hanlon was faster. 2 of his men burst in from the back entrance, the sound of boots, shouts, the metallic click of cuffs. Nora screamed as they seized Adrian, forcing him to his knees. Don't! She shouted. He's bleeding out! Hanlon stepped closer, gripping Adrian's jaw. Don't worry, nurse, we'll patch him up. He's worth more alive. Adrian spat blood at his shoes. You'll never make it out of this. Hanlon smiled thinly. I already have. He turned to leave, signaling his men. One of them grabbed Nora's arm, but Hanlon raised a hand. Leave her. No one will believe her story. By morning, she'll be just another hysterical nurse who lost her mind after her shift. They dragged Adrian toward the waiting SUV. Adrian! Nora screamed, trying to follow, but her leg gave out, the pain in her arm flaring white-hot. He twisted in their grip, eyes locking with hers. Stay alive, Nora. Then the door slammed, the engine roared, and they were gone, taillights vanishing into the black rain. The cabin was silent again. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. Rain poured through the shattered windows. Nora crawled to her feet, every muscle trembling. Elise's body lay still beside the overturned table, the syringe still lodged in her neck. Her breath came in gasps. Pain, anger, fear, all colliding in one unbearable ache. She stumbled to the window, staring into the darkness where Hanlon had disappeared. Her reflection looked back at her. Wild-eyed, blood-streaked, no longer the nurse who had clocked in for a night shift 24 hours ago. She whispered to herself, voice trembling but fierce, You took my sister. You took him. I'm coming for you. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the wreckage. Nora turned toward the fire, where Adrian's blood still stained the floorboards, her hands clenched into fists. For the first time, she understood what Adrian had meant when he said, You don't get to walk away from blood. The explosion at the cabin tore the night apart. For a moment, the forest burned like dawn had come too early. Red and wrong. By the time emergency crews arrived, only embers and twisted beams remained. They found Nora Bennett half buried under debris, unconscious, her hands blistered, her pulse faint. The world called it a hostage crisis. She called it unfinished business. When she woke, the walls were too white, too still. Her wrists were cuffed to a hospital bed. The badge on the officer's chest read FBI, but the way he avoided her eyes told her otherwise. 3 days later, she was moved. A sterile room, a metal table, one camera watching. They thought she was broken. They were wrong. Every sound, every breath, she measured it. The hum of the ventilation, the click of a heel outside the door. Her body remembered this rhythm, not from the ER, but from years earlier, when she'd served as a medic in the Army's Forward Medical Corps. Pressure, threat, control. Different battlefield, same heartbeat. A man in a gray suit entered. Polite smile, crisp file, a badge that gleamed too perfectly. He called himself Agent Donovan. He asked questions that sounded rehearsed. Her fingerprints, her stolen ambulance, the fugitive she'd saved. Nora answered nothing. She watched instead, the scar under his ear, the scent of expensive cologne, the weight of familiarity pressing like a bruise. Her pulse slowed. Her mind went cold. Hanlon. He'd traded uniforms, not sins. Behind the practiced grin, the same predator lived on, arrogant, certain, untouchable. When he leaned close, she smelled the same cologne that had lingered in the morgue 3 years ago, the day her sister's body came home. He didn't remember her then, but she had never forgotten him. She smiled faintly, almost weary. He didn't see her hand brush the edge of his jacket, lifting his ID badge with surgical ease. A medic's touch, steady, precise, invisible. That night, Nora disappeared from federal custody. No alarms, no chaos, just absence, clean and quiet. She slipped through corridors washed in fluorescent light, her steps silent, her mind anchored by an old instinct. Observe, adapt, survive. On a security terminal, she plugged in her phone. The cracked screen flickered. And for a moment, Adrian's voice filled her memory. "If you ever need to find me, follow the pulse trace." He'd built her an encrypted backdoor months ago, hidden inside a defunct medical database. Now, the system lit up. A single signal pulsed on the map. The Brooklyn docks. Old warehouses, rusted cranes, forgotten space. A perfect place for ghosts. Nora exhaled slowly, pulling on a stolen coat. She didn't pray. She'd stopped doing that years ago. The rain came harder near the river. By the time she reached the docks, her clothes were soaked, her hair clinging to her face. The warehouse loomed ahead, ribs of steel, broken windows glowing faintly with light inside. She moved with care, checking each corner, each sound. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she'd learned in combat medicine. Inhale steady, exhale calm. Inside, shadows moved. The faint echo of chains, a man's groan. Adrian. He sat bound to a chair, head bowed, blood slick on his skin. 2 guards lingered near him, bored, cruel, confident. They didn't see her yet. Her fingers brushed the pocket of her jacket. A syringe, loaded with a mild sedative. The same kind she'd used to calm soldiers bleeding out and screaming for morphine. She stepped closer, using the hum of the rain to mask her approach. One of the guards turned. He didn't finish his curse before the needle slid under his jaw. He collapsed soundlessly. The second spun, gun rising. Nora didn't think, just moved, a flicker of memory. Field drills, Afghanistan, close quarter, defense. Her knee caught his wrist. Her elbow drove into his throat. He went down. For a moment, all she heard was rain on metal and her own pulse in her ears. She cut Adrian free. His eyes opened, fevered, exhausted, still full of fight. "You came," he whispered. She didn't answer. Words didn't belong here. She just tightened the bandage around his shoulder and pulled him to his feet. They moved through the corridors, slow but determined. Adrian's weight leaned heavy on her, but she didn't falter. Every breath of his was a reminder that she hadn't failed. Not yet. Rain dripped through the ceiling. Each drop hit the floor like a ticking clock. Then came the light. A harsh beam cutting through the dark. Voices, footsteps. Hanlon emerged from the shadows, flanked by armed men. His suit was soaked, his smirk intact. "You should have stayed in your lane, Bennett," he said. Nora didn't answer. Her eyes flicked, the environment, the exits, the scattered equipment around them. He spoke again, but his words faded into the background hum of adrenaline. She saw the toppled oxygen tank, the leaking valve, the torch half buried under debris. Her heartbeat slowed. When Hanlon raised his gun, Nora moved. A flick of her lighter, the same surgical one she'd kept since her ambulance days, caught the gas. The world split open. A wave of light and sound swallowed everything. Glass, metal, and fire. Smoke filled her lungs. Heat clawed at her skin. But her hands found Adrian's, dragging him through the haze. Outside, the storm had returned. Rain hissed against the flames as they stumbled into the open street. Sirens wailed somewhere far away, too late to matter. Behind them, the warehouse burned, a final heartbeat for the empire Hanlon had built on blood. Under the overpass, the world narrowed to pain and breath. Nora tore off her soaked jacket, pressing it against Adrian's wound. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion she couldn't afford to feel. He caught her wrist, weak, trembling. "You should have left." She didn't look at him. "I don't leave people to die." Rain fell harder. It blurred the tears she refused to shed. Adrian tried to speak, but she pressed a hand against his chest. "Save your strength." His breathing steadied, shallow but alive. For a while, they just sat there, 2 broken silhouettes beneath the roar of the storm. The city around them buzzed with distant sirens, indifferent as ever. Nora's mind was empty and full all at once. Images flashing through the rain, her sister's smile, Hanlon's smirk, Adrian's quiet defiance. The line between vengeance and mercy had vanished somewhere along the way. All that remained was purpose. Adrian stirred beside her. His hand found hers, faint, deliberate. "Still think you're not a hero?" he murmured. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. Thunder rolled above them, long, low, endless, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. The war wasn't over, but for now they were still alive, and that was enough. The warehouse fire burned until sunrise. By the time the sirens reached Brooklyn, the building was nothing but smoke and silence. Nora and Adrian had made it out alive, barely. But when the sun rose, only one set of footprints led away from the river. Adrian was gone. He left no note this time, only his blood on her hands and the echo of his last words. "When you're safe, I'll come back." The city had already moved on. The papers called it the Brooklyn Dock explosion. No one mentioned names. No one mentioned the lives that had been burned with it, but Nora knew better. She always did. She sat by her window in a borrowed apartment in Queens, her arms still bandaged, the world outside gray and indifferent. Every time thunder cracked, she saw the warehouse again, the fire, the smoke, the man she couldn't save walking back into danger. The news blared in the background. Former Police Chief Hanlon arrested in federal corruption probe. Human trafficking ring exposed. Reporters spoke with triumph in their voices. But Nora saw the hollow spaces between their words, the missing names, the silences where power hid. She turned off the TV. It wasn't over. Not for her. Across the country, Adrian Moretti walked into a sterile government office. His gait was uneven, his wounds half-healed, his expression carved from exhaustion. He placed a small black hard drive on the desk in front of a federal agent. "All the data's there," he said quietly. "Hanlon's network, the shipments, the payoffs, the officials. Every last one." The agent, an older woman with sharp eyes and no patience for politics, studied him carefully. "You're aware what you're giving us could bring down half the city?" Adrian gave a tired smile. "Then I'm finally doing something useful. Where will you go?" He adjusted his coat, glancing toward the window. "Nowhere anyone will find me." For Nora, silence was worse than danger. 3 weeks passed. No word, no call, not even a rumor. Her suspension letter arrived by courier, stamped and signed by the hospital board. Pending further investigation regarding federal involvement. She laughed. But there was no humor in it. Guess saving the wrong man isn't in the job description. The apartment felt too small. The city too loud. Every siren on the street made her flinch. Sometimes she thought she saw him in the crowd. A shadow, a reflection, a heartbeat too familiar. But it was always someone else. Then, one evening, she came home to find an envelope slipped under her door. No name, no return address. Inside, a USB drive, a thin folder, and a handwritten note. "You wanted answers. They're all here. Your sister's case wasn't random. It was ordered. I kept my promise. Now it's your turn. AM." Nora's heart thudded painfully as she opened the folder. Inside were case files, autopsy reports, and a signature she knew from the news. Senator William Crane, the same man who'd given public speeches about justice for victims, the same man who'd shaken her hand at a charity gala 3 years ago. Promising to find her sister's killer, she stared at the signature until the letters blurred. Then she laughed softly, bitterly. Of course, truth had a price. And now she was the one holding the bill. The marble steps of the Department of Justice glistened under the drizzle. Nora stood at the bottom, her coat drawn tight, a small black hard drive cold in her pocket, Adrian's backup. Around her, Washington buzzed with cameras and smiles. Senators giving statements, aides whispering damage control. But all she could hear was her sister's laughter, echoing faintly in her memory. She climbed the steps slowly, each one heavier than the last. At the top, she stopped, staring at the towering glass doors that reflected her own face back at her. Not the face of a nurse anymore, not someone who waited for permission to do what was right. "Justice doesn't need a white coat," she whispered. And with that, she walked inside. The rain returned, soft and relentless. Tapping against the windows of a small diner outside, DCA man sat in the corner booth, his hat pulled low, a newspaper folded in his hands. Across the front page, whistleblower nurse leaks files, linking Senator Crane to trafficking ring. Beneath the headline was a photo. Nora, walking up those marble steps, a faint, determined smile on her face. The man smiled too, just a little. He placed the newspaper down beside a lighter, the same lighter that had once started a fire in Brooklyn. "You did it," he murmured. "You really did it." The waitress came by with the check, but the booth was already empty. The man had vanished into the rain before she could turn around. Spring returned to Manhattan. The city looked cleaner, but Nora knew better. Darkness didn't disappear, it just changed suits. She stood in front of St. Luke's Hospital one last time. Her nameplate was gone from the nurse's station. Her locker was empty. She left an envelope on the administrator's desk, her resignation and a donation receipt, $1 million. Transferred anonymously from an offshore account that once belonged to Hanlon's network. When the receptionist called after her, "Nora, where are you going?" She smiled faintly. "Wherever the truth takes me." Outside, the city shimmered under spring rain. Cars hissed over wet asphalt. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled like distant applause. Nora walked down the street, her hands tucked in her coat pockets, eyes lifted toward the skyline. In one pocket, a folded note, worn, creased, familiar. "When you're safe, I'll come back," she smiled softly. "Then you'd better hurry, Moretti." A gust of wind swept through, carrying the smell of rain and possibility. For the first time in years, Nora didn't feel like she was running from something. She was walking toward it, and somewhere, maybe watching from a rooftop, maybe a continent away. Adrian smiled too, because they both knew. The truth wasn't free. But it was finally theirs. If this story made your heart beat a little faster, made you believe that even in the darkest places, love and justice can still exist, leave a comment below and tell us what you felt. Don't forget to hit like, and follow the channel to catch the next chapters of Veil of Hearts. Because this storm isn't over yet.